This time on Harpam's Restorations, we attempt to start the forklift. You notice I said attempt. Anyway, we're still working on it, and you can kind of follow along what I've done so far. And then at the end, I've got a little bit of, I don't know, I don't want to say bad news, but news about how much we're going to be able to get done going forward. So stick around. All right, we got our first sub harness done. It's the one that goes from the generator to the field regulator. I like using this stretchy mesh stuff. Gives me more flexibility. And then I usually put a piece of heat shrink tubing on it to keep it from fraying. When I'm not in a hurry, what I do is I will not only crimp the ends, I also solder them. So I pull the plastic boot off these, crimp them, solder them, and put a piece of heat shrink tubing over there. This one I don't have because I had the wrong end on it. I cut it off, and when I went to put the new proper end on it, I forgot to put the heat shrink tubing on it. But it was, it's just a ground, so I'm not gonna fuss about that. I wasn't gonna waste another connector. So I've got ground to ground. I've got armature to armature and field to field. And I have ohmed these out. They all make a good connection, and this makes a good connection to ground. So later on I'll show you how I do these. Okay, hopefully you can see this. I've got the terminals crimped onto the one end of the excuse me, one end of the harness. And basically what I do is I take my ever venerable Win soldering iron. Let it heat up here a little bit. And I will, once it gets heated up here, we'll heat the terminal or the ring terminal up. And then what I want to see is I want to see that solder flow into the joint there. Okay, so we've got that done. And what I'll do here, get in a hurry and not let it cool down. And then I'll shove the heat shrink tape maybe over the end of it. Got a little bit too much of a blob of solder on there. And we'll just take this and shrink the heat shrink tubing. So I've got all these I've got to do that to. Apparently I forgot one. But anyway, I got all those that I've got to do that to, and then I'll go and put the Deutsch connector, I believe it's called, on here over at the forklift. Okay, I'm not quite done. but I'm getting close. This is a before and after. The old wiring harness and the new one. So I've got, on this end, I've got all the terminals put on that will go to the various sensors and coil and starter relay. And then this end is like this. I will take that over and we're going to take that over and put it into the forklift and then attach that to it. The wiring harness, excuse me, is finished. I've got it all up in here. Now, one thing that I did different than original is I use these Deutsch connectors and a power pole connector and everything. So if I need to take the instrument panel off, I can. It comes down this raceway. Here's the horn. This is instrument panel to ground. This is the negative, goes to the negative pole, obviously, on the battery. And then the main wiring harness snakes around there. I've got connections over here to, maybe you can see that, to the oil pressure sending units, water temp there. I've got my wires going to my coil, and then I've got wires going to this little solenoid here. And what the solenoid does, when they built these, they were originally built for gas, and then if somebody ordered the propane, they used a propane kit for it. And so what this solenoid does is this connects to the propane tank. There's a button here because these are designed, this wire comes over here to one of the oil filter or oil sender. There's actually two oil senders, one for the actual gauge and one for this. And if it doesn't sense that there's any oil pressure, it cuts this solenoid off or de-energizes the cylinder. What this button is for is this. When you go to start it, obviously you're not going to have any oil pressure. So you push down and hold this, and it'll, while you start it, and it'll give it propane to get it to run. I've got to modify this. The original battery on this big heavy plate here on the back of it, there was a couple posts that came out that you would use to hold the battery down. They were cut off, and I'm going to use the 6-volt Optima on this. So I bought this, and this battery mount, it doesn't quite fit, so I'm going to have to cut it off at an angle so it'll fit in there. And then this goes back on there to protect it. And there was also a cover that went from here, basically went from here over here to protect the battery. I don't have that. I'm going to remake something. And then the rest of the wiring harness, I've got a wire here that energizes the brake lock. I have not hooked it back up because I need to take the brake lock off because I'm still having trouble with it leaking. Then obviously I come here and I've got some more wires that come out. I'll tie those down. Here's the little short wiring harness that goes from the voltage regulator to the generator, and I still need to polarize that generator. And then this wire goes clear up, gets power off to control the voltage regulator. So it's not real super difficult. um, to do the wiring harness. It just took a little bit of time. Okay, I've got a little bit of a problem here. Here. Starter's spinning okay, but it is not engaging the gear. So that means I get to drop that starter out of there and figure out what's causing that. Okay, the mystery of why the starter wouldn't engage is this is the new starting gear I got. And this is the original starting gear. I put it back on because the starter rotates clockwise. And so this gear spins up like this, going in that direction to engage. This was a counterclockwise one, and it spins the opposite direction. So when I had this one on, it was actually backing the gear back. So I went online and looked, and these are pretty expensive. I bought this like 4 years ago, and I vaguely remember him when I purchased it asking me whether it was a clockwise or counterclockwise, and I must have guessed wrong. So I'll contact them and see if they can swap this out. Otherwise, we're going to be running this for a little while. A couple that I found on eBay, they wanted $150 for them. So we'll see how this works, and maybe later we'll put a new one on. So anyway, I got to put that back on. We'll see if we can rotate the engine. Here's where we're at. I got the starter put back in, and I meant to film it, but I got involved and forgot to do that. So once I got the starter in and tried to start it, the starter gauge, or the starter gear, would engage. However, it either just thunk and not turn it at all, or sometimes I could get it to turn over maybe once very, very slowly. So I should have known better, but I had put, I think these are 4 gauge, maybe smaller, battery cables on it, and this is 6 volt, and that was no bueno. So hopefully you can see that. I went and had a mechanic make me some 2/0 cables, and now it can spin it very easily. So then my next problem, trying to get it started, temporarily hooked up my propane tank, checked for leaks and everything. And I think I explained in one of the previous videos, this is a button you push. This solenoid here is designed to turn on and off the propane propane delivery. And normally when it's running, what it does is there's a oil gauge down here that I've got a wire running here, and that oil gauge will energize that solenoid, so it keeps the flow of propane going to it. This is just during startup, since you're not going to have oil pressure. This will pressurize the systems long enough for you to get it to start. When I first did it, or when I first tried starting it, it did pressurize it once, but later on I found out I wasn't getting any pressure. So obviously this is a 6-volt solenoid. It'd be kind of hard, you can't find them. What I thought I would do if I had to replace this was I could get a 12-volt one, a modern 12-volt one, and then I'd have to get a voltage increaser and mount it somewhere to increase it from 6 volts to 12 volts. But what I did is I took this apart. Everything seemed to work okay. What I found is there was just enough corrosion on here that I didn't clean off that I needed to do that. And then the other thing I found is, as you can see, I used some the yellow Teflon tape on there to stop leaks, and that made the ground sketchy. So what I ended up doing is I just ended up creating a new ground cable and running it from here to there, and now that works. So where I'm at now, I'm still not sure. I do get spark. I can turn it over and it'll fire just a little bit, and but it will not run. So I'm hoping I don't have to replace that Optima battery that I put in there. I bought 5 years ago and it sat around, and I'm hoping it's not completely bad. The other thing that I had happen to me is last time I was out here trying to get it to start, I believe the starter got a little bit warm, and then it wasn't, all of a sudden wasn't engaging very well. So I've let this charge. I'm going to put the big battery charger on it that's got start mode, 6-volt start mode. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure, make sure that when it's in run mode, when I have the key turned on, I only get 5.4 volts there. Now I think that's probably this. I bought this coil from Pertronics, and then I got the Pertronics module in there. I'm thinking it's got its own ballast resistor in there that's dropping it, because if I measure from the positive side of the coil directly to ground, I get the over 6 volts. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hook the big charger up there and make sure that I've got enough voltage there to keep it running. So I'll see what happens here. All right, while I'm waiting for the new starter gear, I'm working on other pieces, final pieces that I gotta get done. This is the engine cover that goes on the side of it. This part screws into the top, and then this will swing up so you can gain access to the engine. And when I got the forklift, they were not installed. Luckily, the person I bought it from found them and gave them to me. What I've done on this one, first of all, it's pretty straight. I took it over to my metalworking table and straightened it all out. Then the other thing I had to do back here, maybe right there, you can see I had to re-spot weld. There's a good example. I had to re-spot weld the grate to it. And then the biggest thing I had to do was let me see if it's over here. Nope. Hang on. Gonna look at the dirty floors. Okay, here's my metalworking table. Right there it is. This is the only spring that I had left that would hold it. The purpose was to hold it open. So what I ended up doing is going on Amazon, buying these. These are a spring for car trailers for the ramps, apparently. But I bought a set of 4 of them. And then I used the torch to heat these up and unwind them. I unwound one coil. Probably should have done another one, but unwound one coil and then bent it. This part here, right there, is what gives it the ability to flip completely up. So when it's on the side of the forklift and you start to lift it up, then that flips it up like that, holds it straight up. So the other thing I had to do is I had to use my spot welder. These were rolled over on the opposite side. You can see this little tab here. That was actually originally flipped up to keep the spring from coming out. So what I ended up doing is I just bent some 16 gauge metal here, made a little L there, and then spot welded that back on. What I'm using for my spot welding is my 220 volt Harbor Freight spot welder that I've had for years and have barely used. So this one is, I need to do a final media blast on it and then paint it, and I've got to do the other side. Now the other side, the problem I have, you can see it's not very straight. I have to go over, straighten it out. On this one, on this side, I'm missing one of the brackets, so I have to remake the bracket. And then the other big problem I had is apparently at some point they replaced this and they didn't have a piece cut long enough, so they welded these pieces of metal in there, kind of booger welded it all up, and I don't care for that. You know, I want this to be halfway decent. I'm not a professional body man, or anywhere close to it. So I have got local metal company is going to cut me a piece big enough to put on here, and in the meantime I'll cut this all off, get it all cleaned up, get it straightened out, and do my springs. Oh yeah, the other thing on this, when I got this, the rod going down the middle of it was broke, so I had to go out, get a new rod and shove it down there. But anyway, I'll go through and get this one ready. Today, I think what I'll probably do is do a final media blast on this. I took the paint off of it originally by dunking it in the hot tank. I can't remember if I did an actual media blast it. I don't think I did. But anyway, I'll media blast it, paint it, get it ready to go back on, and get this one done as far as I can until hopefully sometime next week, Monday or Tuesday, they'll give me a call and they'll have this cut. They didn't have any drops, so they had to cut it out of a piece. So, all right, here we go. Okay, there you have it. Got it ground off. Now I just need to take grinder with a flat wheel on it and dress that up, and then we can start straightening it and putting it back together. Okay, over on the metal welding table, what I've got set up here is I needed to make these barrels big enough, wide enough that the spring would work in them. So the way I'm doing that is I'm taking a smaller punch here pounding that in there to open that up on each side just enough, and then I come back with a larger punch to finish it off. So I'll do that here real quick. Okay, there it is, spot welded back on. I may have to open that up a little bit more, but maybe not. So now I've got to reform the springs and make the tabs that hold those things in. So I might straighten out this as much as I can first. Now, all I did to make that is I cut out a piece of 16 gauge steel like this with a tab that came up. Then I rolled it over and cut it on the spring and cut it off. Now what I made that out of is, in the IT profession, I run an IT company, and when we replace servers, we get these pieces of metal. So I grabbed those, so they make perfect scrap metal for doing this kind of work. Well, my Harbor Freight Chicago welding spot welder kind of fritzed out on me, and I started to take it apart, thinking maybe one of the wires in the coil had burned up. But after a little bit, I looked down and found this. So I'm going to first attempt to use this butt splicing, and if that doesn't work, I will actually take it apart, solder it. I'd like to get a good mechanical connection on it. That's why I'm going to try using this. Wish me luck. Well, for what it's worth, there's the first side panel painted. Got 2 coats on there. Coat of primer and 2 coats. I don't know, I'm having some trouble with some bubbling. I don't know what's causing that, but we'll wait and see what happens after that dries. Alright, I got the new starter gear in from Steiner tractor, and as you can see, this one rotates counterclockwise, whereas the original new one that I had rotated counterclockwise. I'm sorry, this rotates clockwise. Interesting thing is it's black anodized, no big deal. Now I did have to look up on these washers, how do you do these? One tab goes down and goes in the crook of the spring. The other one gets bent up to keep these from coming loose. So if you're ever redoing one, there's your information for that. So I'll put it back together and we'll throw it in the forklift and see what happens. Now, this is a Delco Remy 110735. Steiner listed that this would work on a 110736, which was for like a John Deere tractor, I think some farm-alls. I took a gamble, and because they looked almost exactly alike. So hopefully that fixes my starter problem. You can tell the teeth on it are a lot less worn. So hopefully that helps and the ring gear hasn't been chewed up too much. Got my plasma cutter out to do a little project here, and it would not cut anything. So finally I looked at the consumables, and these are new ones. Focus, there we go. So I don't know why it won't cut with the old ones. Okay, so we've attempted to get it to run. It'll fire a little bit, as you've seen. I think I still have an issue with the vaporizer regulator and the regulator built into the carburetor. I do have a friend that has a little experience with forklifts, and as soon as he gets time, he's going to come over and try to help me out with it. I really wanted to get this thing going, but I spent about 3 weeks trying to get that started on my own, and just haven't been able to get there. In the meantime, found out I've got a medical condition, and it's going to require some radiation therapy and so on and so forth. So I'm not sure how much energy I'm going to have to work on this. So I know this episode was a long time in coming, and I apologize for that, but I got to take care of a few things, and boy, I really wanted to get this running and put back together. I am so close after 5 years. So we'll keep on banging on it. Hopefully maybe I can get it running and do a quick update on it here, and then we're finishing up. I've got plenty of projects I want to get to, but they may have to wait 4 or 6 months before I get back to them. I'm going to try to do some little stuff and maybe post some stuff, but anyway, that's where we're at. I appreciate you guys watching and commenting and following along, and hopefully we'll see you soon. So until next time, like, subscribe, and comment, and hopefully we'll see you soon.